LABR auction recaps, the League of Alternative Baseball Reality. I participated in the NL only. Chris was in the AL only, and there are obviously other great players, people from all around the industry that were playing in these leagues with us as well. Some unique rules. The players you draft basically have to stay in your lineup. You can only bench a player if they go on the IL, they get demoted, or you have to drop that player if you want to get them out of your lineup. $260 standard size budget. For my draft, I spent 67% on hitting, 33% on pitching. The goal was to play the middle of the draft, Scott. And we've talked about this. The deeper you go into a particular draft format, maybe spreading that money out and getting some higher floor players, guys that you think are going to get some playing time. So, yeah. I mean, I really, really leaned into it. I did not get a single player over $25. I executed the plan to perfection. Now we're going to find out if that plan was the correct plan. I don't know if that was the correct plan, but at least for me, that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I achieved in doing so.
Yeah. So just to elaborate on that a little bit, we talk sometimes about how the waiver wire is scarce in 15-team roto leagues. Well, if you're doing a 12-team roto league with half the player pool, only AL or only NL, that's more like a 24-team roto league, right? So that it's that much deeper, which is to say it doesn't exist. You can get some relievers off the waiver wire, and of course, occasionally there will be a call up or something that nobody had rostered already. But like what you draft is basically your roster. And so just getting playing time from every spot is a big part of this. And so what you're saying about not wanting to, no, this is definitely not the format to go studs and duds, because you want to spend like, you want to spend, I don't know, like at least $5 on every position. If you get down to the $2-3 range in an AL or NL only league, it's very likely that's just going to be a black hole in your lineup. You know, somebody who doesn't contribute much of anything. Doesn't always work out that way, but you certainly can't trust in it. So I've found that you said you didn't want to spend more than 25. I try not to go 30. And we do. I don't play in LABR, but I run the CBS AL and NL only auctions. If you want to review those, you can find them on the site. We did NL last week. We did AL the week before, and you know, you can compare those prices to these. There are some similarities. There are some differences, but I play in those every year, and I found the same thing when I distribute my dollars more evenly. Doesn't have to be perfectly evenly. It doesn't have to be $14 on every roster spot. I wouldn't advise that. But if you go too big on any one player, it's kind of hard to fill out your roster the way you need to.
All right. So for those watching us here on YouTube, I'm going to pull up the draft board so you can just check this out. It is a little bit tougher to see just because there are a lot of names and colors and lots of things going on here. But reading off my hitters first, I did pay up for catchers. I got Sean Murphy and Tyler Stevenson, $12 each. Michael Busch for $9. Tyro Estrada for $12. Mason Wynn for $19. Austin Riley for $25. Otto Lopez for $12. Josh Bell for $7. Seiya Suzuki for $21. Tommy Edman for $18. Lars Nootbaar for $11. Max Kepler for $5. Zach Veen for $1. And Jamer Candelario for $10. The one that stands out, Zach Veen for $1. I don't know if he's going to be on the opening day roster. He's looked good in spring so far, but he is on a 40-man roster for the Rockies. I think if he continues to play well in spring, maybe he is on their opening day roster. And like I mentioned, this unique format, if one of your players gets demoted, you can actually take that player out of your lineup. So in the reserve rounds, I grabbed a few outfielders, guys that are probably not going to play very much, but that does allow me some flexibility, even if Zach Veen does not make the opening day roster. Scott, what do you think of the way I put together the offense here?
I was wondering about speed at first, though. I am reminded Mason Wynn has set a goal of stealing 40 bases, and I'm counting on him being a much bigger base stealer this year. It's just you got him and you got Tyro Estrada at second. Tyro Estrada stole 1 or 2 bases last year, but of course we're hoping he bounces back. It's a lot of hoping at stolen base, right? Between Mason Wynn and Tyro Estrada and Zach Veen making the roster. And then you got Otto Lopez there, who is...
I think Lopez could give 20. I think Edman could give 25 plus, something like that. So,
yeah, I like that seems like a good outfield. I like the way you distributed your dollars in the outfield. Of course, Veen may end up being a waste, but it's hard to get all 5 outfield spots filled with somebody bankable. I would have probably distributed those catcher dollars elsewhere. And just looking at some of the catcher costs, like JT Realmuto went for 13.
That was a good buy.
Which is one more. Yeah, that was the best. Like I've tried, like I'm trying to do something different this year where instead of kind of planning out my roster before the auction, I'm going to try to just wait to see what the best values I can get and lock those in first and then work around those. And so I'm hoping to be the guy who takes advantage of the JT Realmuto. Obviously, you can't take advantage of every value because there are more values than can fit in one budget usually. But I don't know, $24 in a league where it's this deep, where it's this difficult to fill every spot. I probably would have maybe gotten one of those catchers and just gone really cheap for the second catcher spot, like a Carson Kelly. I see who went for $1. He's probably going to get a decent number of at-bats for the Cubs. And then maybe I could have used those Tyler Stevenson savings to get like I see Marcell Ozuna went for 20. So if I could upgrade from Candelario to Ozuna at DH and go with the super cheap second catcher, easy for me to say in retrospect, but I think I'm a little worried about this offense, and that would relieve some of my worries.
Yeah, no, there were a few good buys throughout the draft that I felt the same way about. Like Ozzy Albies going for 21. I thought that was a great price. Realmuto you brought up for 13. I kind of regretted not going extra buck on one of those guys and just kind of rearranging the plan. Marcell Ozuna for 20. I definitely was thinking about being in on that as well. So I totally hear you. I did look at the winner from last year. He had 2 good catchers on this team. In the first 2 years I competed in this format, my second catcher was always bad, like really bad, like $1 or $2 players. And it just felt like more of a detriment than anything. So I wanted a better second catcher. I think maybe I could have gotten away with like a Keibert Ruiz for 9 or Herrera for 8 and maybe got some savings there. But I totally get what you're saying. Well, I haven't done this before in a format like this, so I guess we'll see if it works out, paying up for 2 good catchers. Yep. On the pitching side of things, I wound up with Dylan Cease for $25, then Sonny Gray for 16, Jesus Luzardo for 11, Kyle Finnegan for 9, Merrill Kelly for 8, Grant Holmes for 5, Jason Adam for 5, Quinn Matthews for 4, and Calvin Fauché for 3. So a little bit of background here. In this draft last year, I got David Bednar for 20, and obviously that did not work out. But instead of just paying up for one closer and then taking a few $1 spec shots, I figured let me kind of divvy it up a little bit more and see if Kyle Finnegan can give me 25 or 20 plus saves again, or if Calvin Fauché is the closer for the Marlins, maybe that works out, or if Robert Suarez just implodes, maybe Jason Adam takes over as the closer there. And the starting pitchers, I think it was like an okay distribution. It wasn't the exact names that I was looking to get, but in terms of just like SP1, SP2, SP3, SP4, I think it turned out okay. What do you think, Scott?
I really like what you did with saves. That is a very tricky category in formats this deep because, I always have a hard time paying for saves, and there's just no way around it when there are only 15 closer possibilities out there, in an NL-only league. And I find I usually budget 15 for a closer, and I really have to go 16 or 17, and I just don't prepare myself for that. And so sometimes I get left out altogether. In my NL-only league, I just committed, okay, I'm going to spend 17 on a closer, and I got Ryan Walker for 17. But you got here 2 presumed closers in Kyle Finnegan and Calvin Fauché for a combined $12. And I think that's the way to do it. If you can get them for that low, in my league, Fauché went for 8 instead of 3. That seems great. and Finnegan went for 11 instead of 9. So you got a good deal on those two. And the thing is, if they stick in the closer role, which is certainly isn't a given. I mean, they're among the worst relievers in that role. But Finnegan, we've seen do it for a couple years now. And Fauché, I mean, who else do the Marlins have? If they stick in the closer, you might win saves. You might win saves just because you happen to have two of those guys. Well, everybody else has at most one, there's probably somebody else with two, but you know what I mean. It's not. There's definitely not enough for every team or even most teams to have two. So I think that was good. I think overall, I wonder if you have enough starting pitching depth. I like the start there with Cease and Gray. And Luzardo's look good this spring. Hopefully he bounces back beyond that. I don't know that we can count on Merrill Kelly anymore. I like Grant Holmes as a sleeper, but I don't know that I totally confident he's going to stick in the rotation.
That's fair. Yeah.
And then beyond those four, there's nobody you can count on.
I mean, Bailey Falter, Scott, come on. I did wind up with Quinn Matthews here, as I mentioned earlier, unique format where if someone gets demoted, it gives you a little bit more flexibility to put another pitcher in your lineup. So I drafted Quinn Matthews knowing that he will not be in my opening day lineup, and I'm just hoping for him to be up by like May or June and make an impact from that point on. I have to fill him in with like Bailey Falter or Bobby Miller in the meantime. This is a league that allows trades, so potentially could be looking to make some trades there at some point this season. That was my NL only team. I am going to pull up Chris's AL LABR team real quick, and we'll take a look at that just to see how he.
I'll just criticize that too. I don't have to put my team up. I just get to criticize yours.
Yes, you are. That is your role. So you are the judge and the jury. And speaking of Judge, Chris Towers wound up with Aaron Judge on his team. He spent 59% of his budget on hitting, 41% on pitching. And once you see it, you'll notice. I mean, this is a pretty strong pitching staff here for Chris. So at catcher, he did go bottom of the barrel.
Well, this will be interesting because he did what we didn't want to do. He spent a ton of money on one player, and so we'll see if the lower end players give him enough to justify that move.
At catcher, he has Christian Vasquez for 2 and Kyle Teal for 1, Seth Brown for 3, Will Wagner for 2, Jacob Wilson for 10, Jose Miranda for 3, Marcelo Mayer for 2, Gio Urshela for 3, Aaron Judge for 46, Anthony Santander for 24, Mike Trout for 24, Randy Arozarena for 21, JJ Bleday for 10, Harrison Bader for 2. So he wound up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players, 8 hitters in his lineup that are $3 or less. But I mean, the outfield is tremendous. Like maybe that could just carry him. He also needs Mike Trout to stay healthy, which is, not a
sure. Yeah. That's the thing. I think if you're buying Judge, if you're committing that much to one player in a league this deep, you gotta treat the rest of your draft like that first chapter in Moneyball, where it didn't make it to the movie, but if you read the book, it was like the A's draft from that year, and they didn't want to take a risk on anybody. They wanted to make sure they hit all their picks, so it was just super, super, super safe. That was like when they got Nick Swisher or whatever that year of the draft. Anyway, that's how I think you need to play it. And Trout is not somebody I would have gone for unless it was at an obvious discount. 24 doesn't seem like that. He went for 18 in the CBS AL-only league for what it's worth. So yeah, I just don't have enough confidence in him staying healthy to invest that much capital in him after already dumping so many into Judge. So that would be my biggest critique. Krista actually did pretty well here to fill out his lineup with players who are going to play. Second catcher, Kyle Teal. Okay, might be a while before he plays. Marcelo Mayer. He said he was trying to get somebody to bid 3 on him, and he kind of got caught with taking Mayer as his middle infielder. So those spots are clearly problems. And a lot of these players are they're in line for platoon roles, probably. Seth Brown, Will Wagner, Harrison Bader. Then there's somebody like Gio Urshela in the corner infield spot. He may not be good enough to hold on to a starting role all season just because he's starting out there. So I'm not confident it's going to go right, but I think Chris gave himself a chance with the hitters he managed to slot in around Judge there.
All right, and then I mentioned he spent more money on pitching than I did, and up top he's got Josh Hader at $24, George Kirby at $22, Grayson Rodriguez at $19, Yusei Kikuchi at $10, Max Scherzer at $8, Lucas Erceg at $8, Jackson Jobe at $7, Edwin Uceta at $5, Cody Bradford at $4. So the pitching staff, I think it looks awesome. I mean, he's got a top-tier closer. He might have a second closer in Lucas Erceg. If P. Fairbanks can't stay healthy and the velocity remains down, like, maybe Edwin Uceta gets saves as well. And the starters look really good too. And I mentioned this is a trading league. So if most likely Chris winds up with a strength on the pitching side, he could, maybe trade one or two pitchers for hitters throughout the season.
Yeah. So your fourth starter was Grant Holmes.
It was Merrill Kelly. Or, I mean, if you like Grant Holmes more, maybe he's SP4. But yeah, I viewed it as like Merrill Kelly as my SP4.
Okay. So Grant Holmes was 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's like a starting pitcher deeper here because he's got Kirby, Grayson, Kikuchi, Scherzer, Jobe, and Bradford. So he's got 6 that I think are going to be more or less good. Obviously, Scherzer, he may not stay healthy. Maybe Jackson Jobe doesn't pan out, spend some time in the minors. There's never going to be a scenario where it all works out, but he's given himself, I think, a little bit of a buffer there. And saves shouldn't be an issue just by virtue of having Hader. If Erceg and Uceta spend any time in the closer role, he gives himself a chance of winning that category, just like you did, but in a different way. What did he spend up between those 3? He spent 24 on Hader alone, and then Uceta was 5, Erceg was 8. So, he spent 37, you spent 13. I'd rather spend 13, but it's good. It's good to have a lot of something, and he has a lot of saves there, seemingly. So I feel a lot better about Chris's pitching staff than the hitter side for sure.